Hello, welcome back. I'm Bernie Hayes. Today we have some very, very interesting information to you coming from Gwen Moore of the Missouri Historical Society today on the Bernie Hayes Show. Well, welcome back. I'm Bernie Hayes, and with me, as I promised you, Gwen Moore from the Missouri Historical Society. Welcome, Ms. Moore.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's been a long time trying to get you here.
Well, it's my pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
And my privilege as well.
I see you in the St. Louis American. I see your column, so forth. And when I go by the Missouri Historical Society, they says Gwen Moore is doing a fantastic job. Exactly what do you do?
Well, my title is Curator of Urban Landscapes and Community Identity. Mm-hmm. And basically, that's African American history.
Sure.
And as a curator, our roles are multiple. We think of ourselves as the keeper of the material culture. So
right.
A big part of my job is not just researching local African American history, but collecting those things that help us to tell the story. So they could be objects, mm-hmm. they could be photographs, they could be documents, they could be moving images, just everything that would help us tell the story of African Americans in the city of St. Louis.
Right. And you've had some wonderful displays here. Like, could you tell us some of the exhibits you had?
Well, the last exhibit that I was involved with, and that's one of the things that curators do too, mm-hmm. that we do plan exhibits,
sure.
Of course, with the help of everybody in the Historical Society, but we do the basic research and come up with the concept. Mm-hmm. And the last one that I was involved with was number one in civil rights, which looked at the history of African Americans in the freedom struggle.
Right.
And we started with 1819, which is pretty far back. And let me just say from the very beginning, my inspiration was Judge Nathan B. Young.
Oh, wow. Judge Nathan left us the St. Louis American newspaper, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Sure
Judge Nathan B. Young was
he was a dear friend of mine.
Was he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes.
Yeah, my heroes too.
Okay, and I always say that we have many great historians in the city of St. Louis, African American historians. Judge Nathan Young was one. Yes. Herman Dreer was another one, and of course everybody knows Julia Davis.
No doubt about it.
But
she was the subject of our Black History.
Oh yeah.
Black History moment 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay, yeah. Just an amazing woman.
Certainly.
But Judge Young, in 1964, he had written this huge. It was the front page of the 1964 St. Louis American, and it was mm-hmm. the bicentennial for the city of St. Louis.
Sure.
And he wrote that because he said he did not want the city of St. Louis to overlook the contributions that African Americans had made to the history of this city, to the growth and the development of this city. Mm-hmm. So the whole issue was devoted to African American history.
This is great.
And one of the things he said is that St. Louis is number one in civil rights, which shocked everybody because we usually don't think of St. Louis as being a leader
precisely
in civil rights or in the freedom struggle.
Right.
But he dated the beginnings of the African American freedom struggle to 1819, which is pretty darn early.
Gee.
And what he said was that this was the first civil rights demonstration on the continent. It happened in 1819 when free blacks and their white allies protested the fact that Missouri was going to enter the Union as a slave state.
Wow.
And to be perfectly honest, I've tried to verify that. Mm-hmm. But, with a lot of African American history, so much is oral tradition. Yeah. So much of our history has not been documented.
And revised.
And absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. As they say, lost, stolen, or strayed.
Sure. Yeah.
So sometimes it's difficult to verify everything. As an example, is the story of John Berry Meacham. Mm-hmm. John Berry Meacham, of course, was the founder of First Baptist Church in 1829. He was a free black man, started a school in the basement of First Baptist. But when there was a law passed by the state of Missouri in 1847 that outlawed the education of African Americans, and they actually raided that school and arrested the teacher, what they said was that John Berry Meacham started a freedom school.
On the Mississippi River.
On the Mississippi River. where that was beyond the reach of the state of Missouri.
Yeah, no, that's unique.
That's unique. Yeah. Now, we've never been able to verify that story. And some people say, well, it didn't happen because we can't verify it. But we can't say that just because there's no written documentation that it didn't happen. So I think a lot of times that's what's happened with African American history, especially when we're going so far back in history.
Yeah. They say, Ms. Moore, that if you don't see it, if you don't read about it, it didn't happen. So that's easily, they can say that's not a true story. But I mean, the griots, our historians,
absolutely.
Our ancestors, if they documented it and passed it down, it probably did happen.
It probably did happen.
Certainly. Yeah. You speak about civil rights. We just lost a very, very personal, dear friend of mine, Norman Say.
Norman Say.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was documented in that.
Very much
exhibit,
so.
Yeah.
I mean, he contributed so much to the civil rights struggle in St. Louis. In fact, he was one of the youngest members of CORE. He joined CORE when he was 16 years old.
Yeah.
In 1948, he was a Vashon High School student.
Yeah.
So he was 87 when he passed.
Yes.
So we're talking about, 71 years in the struggle?
At least. Yeah.
And I always say no one has a longer civil rights resume than Norman Say. So we have really lost a hero to the movement.
Because between Norman Say and Percy Green, they're both known as Mr. Civil Rights in the city of St. Louis.
Absolutely. Percy Green is another just amazing. We call him an icon.
Yeah,
he's an icon of the civil rights movement. He's an icon of the struggle because he's been in the struggle for so long and still in the struggle. I mean, he's just. I can't say enough about Percy Green.
Working on the exhibit, the civil rights exhibit at the Missouri Historical Society, how did it personally affect you, if it did?
Well, it gave me a lot of pride.
Okay.
I was really happy that we could tell this story because prior to the exhibit even going up at the History Museum, probably a year out, I was going to different organizations talking about this exhibit, and people would often say, well, we really didn't have a civil rights movement. Or they would say disparaging things about St. Louis. I'm sure you've heard these things
certainly, sure.
all the time, that blacks in St. Louis were passive and docile. So, and I would always have to say, well, no, that's really not true. And I think it comes a lot from the struggle not being covered.
Sure.
For example, the Post-Dispatch and those early civil rights sit-ins and some of the earliest civil rights sit-ins happened here in St. Louis.
And they ignored it.
They ignored it. They wouldn't cover it. Now, years later, they would say, well, we didn't want to inflame the situation. We thought it's best not to talk about these things. Yeah. So if you weren't reading the Black weeklies, if you weren't reading the Argus or the St. Louis American, you'd have no idea this was going on.
That's why it's so important that ethnic newspapers persist here in the city right now.
It's very important.
Because people need to know their history, what's going on in their community, but yet still the major media does not
exactly. I mean, the whole reason for the Black press was that our stories weren't being covered.
Right.
And of course, the Black press, they had this moniker, the crusading Black press, because not only were they covering the African American community and African American history, they saw it as their obligation to be part of the freedom struggle. Right. So they were not objective. Thank God they were not objective.
Yes, they
had to have a certain point of view.
Precisely. There's St. Louis American, the St. Louis Argus, the Pittsburgh Courier, the Chicago Defender. All these were champions.
Legendary Black newspapers.
Yes, and they were there for those to read. My mom and dad couldn't go a week without reading the Chicago Defender. I'm from Chicago, but they did the Chicago Defender. And, the ironic part about that was usually the first page they would turn to would be the obituaries. Because that's the only time you know what's happening in your community and who was lost and so forth.
Well, let me just say, as far as obituaries are concerned, they're a great resource for history.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can get biographical information that you can't get anywhere else.
Sure.
So we collect obituaries at the Missouri Historical Society.
The source is the family members, and usually those
that
close
know
to the person.
history.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. My guest is Gwen Moore. We're here at the New Life Evangelistic Center. Our new address is 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri, although we're trying to reopen 1411 Locust Street in downtown St. Louis, Missouri. Reverend Larry Rice has been a stalwart in not only the advocating for the homeless, but also civil rights activists also, which we'll be talking about that a little bit later. In the meantime, we want you to be supportive of the New Life Evangelistic Center, and you may do so easily, and everything is tax deductible. You may help us provide the programs that Reverend Larry Rice has been providing for almost 50 years through Post Office Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri 63166. Or you may do it online. It takes less than 2 minutes to make a donation or contribution or an investment in New Life Evangelistic Center at www.New Life Evangelistic Center, that's one word, excuse me, .org, O-R-G. Let me repeat that. New Life Evangelistic Center .org. American Express, Visa, Discover Card. Takes less than 2 minutes. We'll be back with Gwen Moore after this.
Hello, I'm Larry Rice. Let me write you a creation prescription at this particular time. A prescription for healing, a prescription for hope. And that prescription is spending 30 minutes to an hour outside, experiencing God's wonderful creation. Job, in the middle of all of his affliction, let down by family and friends, when taken and beholding God's wonderful creation, experienced a healing in his soul. Read it yourself in Job chapter 39 through 41. Till finally Job declared, before I heard about you, but now I really see you, God, experience you in a new and powerful way. Paul speaks of how Christ holds all things together in Colossians chapter 1, starting at verse 15. Get up now, go outside, spend some time in creation, experience God's healing power in your spirit. Let him lift that high blood pressure and heal you from that stress and that anxiety as you take this creation prescription and move in the wonders of all of God's great creation.
Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land. Let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. You trample on the poor and force him to give you grain. Therefore, though you have built stone mansions, you will not live in them. Though you have planted lush vineyards, you will not drink their wine. For I know how many are your offenses and how great your sins. You oppress the righteous and take bribes, and you deprive the poor of justice in the courts. Seek good, not evil, that you may live. Then the Lord God Almighty will be with you, just as you say he is. Hate evil, love good.
And welcome back. I'm Bernie Hayes, and my guest is Gwen Moore from the Missouri Historical Society, or the History Museum here in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm going to say there's a collective initiative that you're working on. What does that mean, and what is it?
Well, we're in the midst of an African-American collecting initiative. In fact, we have a whole African-American history initiative, but I'm involved in the collecting initiative. And what we're trying to do is collect items from the African-American community. There's so much history that we know is in people's homes. As I mentioned before, it could be objects. For example, we collected a lot of, items from the black firefighters. We collected their uniforms, their helmets, their documents. For example, they had a newsletter documenting the development of FIRE, which is the Firefighters Institute for Racial Equality.
Sure. Photographs.
We even got moving images where someone documented, videotaped when they were renovating their headquarters.
My goodness.
And so they even donated that. But all of those things are important to telling a history. And we want to tell the history of, I hate to say ordinary people, but but we want to tell the history of the masses, because so often it's the so-called notable people. For a long time, it was just about wealthy white males.
Sure.
And of course, that's a skewed history. That's not really what history is about. History is about everybody, not just about the very few. So there are probably many items that people have in their homes that we would love to have to help tell the history of African Americans in the city of St. Louis.
And how can they reach you? How can they help you?
They can reach me at my phone number, which is 314-746-4539.
That's a little bit fast for us to read.
Okay, I'm sorry.
To write.
Okay,
Now, if you repeat that for us.
That's 314-746-4539.
And do you have an email address?
I have an email,
Okay.
gmoore, GMOORE, @mohistory.org.
Great.
And I would be happy to come out and talk to anybody.
How about a website? Is there a website?
Yeah, we do have a website, the Missouri Historical Society website, mohistory.org.
Okay, this is great. What got you interested in preserving this history? You personally?
I'm going to tell you, I always credit my mother with our interest in history. My brother is an historian. My older brother, who started out as a history teacher, he went on and went to law school and became a judge, but he's still interested in history.
What's his name?
My brother who's the historian, his name is Joel Horn,
Okay.
and my brother who was the judge, he's retired now, his name is William Horn. He taught at Vashon High School, taught
Okay.
history at Vashon High School for a number of years. But my mother had grown up in Mississippi, Jim Crow, Mississippi, which was not an easy place for blacks.
I know.
And she used to tell us stories about growing up in Mississippi, and she had a historical perspective. And I always tell people, even as a child, I knew who Bilbo was, because she talked about Bilbo, who had been a senator.
Bilbo, yeah.
Yeah, and then he had been a governor and a senator from Mississippi, and very racist. There's no other way to put it.
He never tried to hide it.
Never tried to hide
No,
it.
not at all.
He was advocating sending black people back to Africa.
Sure.
I mean, that's just how bad he was.
Bilbo, yeah.
So we grew up with hearing these stories about growing up in Mississippi and the history of that state. And then when she came to St. Louis, it was basically the same thing. So we sort of grew up not really realizing it, but growing up knowing that that history was important and that the stories were important. And so I think that's where it came from.
Okay. The exhibits that you present at the Missouri Historical Society, how do you define them and how do you research them?
Oh, that could be a lot of work. Well, we do have an archives.
Okay.
And we have a great archives where we collect history. We have photo archive. We have media archive. And of course, we have the library. In our library, everything we have focuses on the history of St. Louis and the region. So that includes East St. Louis and the suburbs. So it's
And the
metropolitan.
1919 riots.
That we don't have.
You don't? Okay.
That protest that they don't have. But we're in the process, and this is the whole point of the collecting initiative, because we want to be a corrective to the past.
Okay.
Because when the Missouri Historical Society was founded over 150 years ago, the people that founded that institution were wealthy white males.
Certainly.
And that
we weren't that important to them, were we?
No, they did not see us as basic for a long time. Historians say we didn't have a history.
Right.
But of course, nothing's further from the truth. So we're a little behind. We got a little behind in collecting African American history. But for the past, 20 years, we're really trying to correct that and make that outreach and let people know that we really want to tell everybody's story, because African Americans and other groups, ethnic groups, racial and ethnic groups, are so critical to the development of the city.
Right.
And if you leave that out, you're not telling the whole story.
Precisely. On the initiative, if one would donate their artifacts to you, their memorabilia to you, do they get a tax break or anything, or the acknowledgement? That
They do get an acknowledgement.
Okay, that this is donated by such and such.
But we don't value. In fact, we can't It's part of our policy. If somebody calls us and say, I have a 1850 portrait of John Milton Turner, how much is it worth? We can't do that. By policy, we're not allowed to do that. We can tell them where to go to get it appraised.
Sure.
So therefore, since we can't put a value on anything, we can't really give people tax breaks. So we really have to depend on the goodwill of our donors.
Sure.
And we hope that people give to us because they recognize the importance of preserving those objects. And that's one of our selling points, that we can preserve these objects for centuries.
Right.
So that generations, many generations will have access to these things. Because to be perfectly honest, when it's sitting in an attic or a basement, it could be damaged and it could be lost forever.
Right. Right.
So I think that's a big selling point.
It needs proper care.
It needs proper care.
Certainly. Well, we'd like you to see this cup here for our visitors. This is the Bernie Hayes Show mug, and Reverend Larry Rice wants each and every one of you to have one. I've already presented Ms. Moore with the book that Reverend Larry Rice, the latest one, that tells about the story of New Life Evangelistic Center, the New Life Evangelistic Center. But Reverend Larry Rice would like you to have that book and this mug, and here's how to get it.
Hello, I'm Larry Rice, Director of the New Life Evangelistic Center. I want to encourage you to get your Bernie Hayes mug. And in addition to sharing a very special gift of $25 or more so we can get back into 1411 Locust, I have a historical book that I want to add to the mug to enable you to get the complete history of what took place between 2012 and 2018 to shut down a church at 1411 Locust because its congregation were primarily homeless people. We're going to share both of these with you if you'll share your gift now so we can get back into the 1411 Locust building and help the hundreds and hundreds of people that are suffering at this time that literally have nowhere to go. I thank God for Bernie Hayes and his faithful years of service, for his program that has touched the lives of so many people. And now we're teaming up with Bernie Hayes, sharing the Bernie Hayes mug and Through the Fire book, if you'll just share that gift of $25 or more. Now be sure you request the Bernie Hayes mug and the Through the Fire book, and you know that you'll be a part of great things God is doing.
We'll return to our guests after this Black History Moment. Today's subject, Chancellor Williams, the son of a former slave, born in 1898. He earned both his bachelor's degree in education and master's degree in history at Howard University, where he began teaching in 1946. He completed his PhD in sociology at American University in 1949 and did research at Oxford University, the University of London, the University of Chicago, the University of Iowa, and in 1956, University College in Ghana. Williams, best known for his book, The Destruction of Black Civilizations, Great Issues of Race from 4500 BC to 2000 AD, in which he attempted to repair the reputation of sub-Saharan Africans prior to the conquest of Europeans by pointing out the achievements of African people and the biases of white academics who would distort knowledge of their great past. Chancellor Williams died in Washington, D.C., of respiratory failure on December the 7th, 1992, at the age of 93. Chancellor Williams, our historian for today.
Now you can take NLEC TV anywhere as you put the NLEC TV app on your iPhone or mobile device. NLEC TV is an innovative TV station that's on the cutting edge of community service. On NLEC TV, you'll discover wholesome family, community, renewable energy, and inspirational programming. Those needing energy assistance, food, clothing, or freedom from the cycle of homelessness will find that plus much more on NLEC TV. Now, you can receive NLEC TV by going to 24.2 on your television set or putting the NLEC TV app on your iPhone or mobile device. For further information, call 314-436-2424 or go to nlecstl.org. That's nlecstl.org.
From the Missouri Historical Society, let me say that again. The Missouri Historical Society, we have Gwen Moore, the curator, and we're so proud to have her here. Ms. Moore, what would you like for our viewers to know specifically today?
Well, right now I'm doing research on African-American businesses in St. Louis.
Okay.
And because we do have a really rich history. I always like to tell the story of the People's Finance Building. Well, we start off with the People's Finance Corporation and Joseph Mitchell, who was the founder of the St. Louis Argus, was instrumental in starting the People's Finance Corporation.
Nanny Mitchell Turner's son, right?
Yes!
Okay.
Which was one of the first financial institutions for blacks in the city of St. Louis. Well, there was one in 1915, started by Frank Williams. Then they decided, he and his investors decided that they wanted to have a building. So they got together and started the People's Finance Corporation, and they built the People's Finance Building. Not only were it all black investors, but they wanted the whole community involved. So one of the things they did, they went to churches and they solicited churches to buy stock in this building. And when that building was built in 1926, there was this huge celebration, from the whole city of St. Louis. The mayor was there, everybody was there. And one of the things that Joseph Mitchell said, and this is something I haven't been able to verify, but he said this was the first commercial building built entirely with black money in the city of not the city of St. Louis, in the country.
In the world.
Yeah. That was 1926.
Okay, where was it located? What was the location?
On 11 North Market and Jefferson.
Oh, Jefferson and Market.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, 11 North Market.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
In the heart of Mill Creek. In fact, that was the black commercial district in the city of St. Louis.
Mill Creek.
Yeah. There were so many black businesses there. So we have a rich history of black businesses. We can talk about Annie Malone, of course,
Sure.
in Poirot College, Blanche Tucker with Business College. There were so many African-American businesses that, of course, when Mill Creek was destroyed, those businesses probably never were able to get back to where they were.
You want artifacts and memorabilia.
That
also
would,
to sustain that too.
That would be, I would love to have anything that would help tell the story of African American business, not just going back to the 1920s.
Sure.
I mean, 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the 21st century.
Yeah. How can they reach you again?
They can reach me by phone at
Okay.
314-746-4539.
Or email.
Or they can email me at gmoore@moorehistory.org.
Great. And you're very accessible, too. If they call that number, they can get Gwen Moore.
They will
right?
get me. And if they leave a voicemail, I will respond immediately.
That's great.
Same thing with emails.
Sure. Any future exhibits you can tell us about?
Well, one that I think you might be particularly interested in. In fact, I hope we can do some collaborations. We're doing one called St. Louis Sounds. That's going to focus on the history of music in the city of St. Louis.
Beautiful.
And, of course, African Americans were critical to that history.
Yes.
Judge Young, by the way, that was one of his interests, and he researched black music in the city of St. Louis. And he was always making claims about the importance of St. Louis. And he said St. Louis is very important to the development of black music.
He was a true historian, was he not?
He was an amazing historian.
Yeah. And we would love to collaborate on something like that with you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because we have so much information in the National Black Radio Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And I think you'd be amazed if you browse through there.
I can't wait to see
we can a wonderful collaboration. Anything we haven't talked about that you want to speak up in the next minute?
Well, we talked about that collecting initiative, but we have an overall African American history initiative that just isn't focusing on collecting; it's focusing on everything.
Right.
So that's going to be programming. It's going to be education. It's going to touch every aspect of what we do at the Missouri Historical Society.
This is great. Thank you, Gwen Moore. Thank you so much for
your
the information.
Thank you so much for having me.
And keep on doing what you're doing, and we sincerely hope that all the exhibits, all the future exhibits at the Missouri Historical Society will be viewed by a mass audience.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to thank you for visiting with us again, too, and thank you for your support of the New Life Evangelistic Center. Our address is 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. Our zip code is 63114, in case you want to visit us. Use your GPS, and we would love to see you and give you a tour of the facility. I'm Bernie Hayes. Thank you so much for many, many years of viewing. See you next time here on NLDC TV, channel 24.2.